I stood in the glass conference room while my supervisor read my name from a printed report. The screen behind her showed my badge time, my car entering the garage, my signature copied clean. People I ate lunch with stared at the table. Someone coughed. No one asked how it could be true. I did not speak. I felt the room decide without me. Security waited by the door. HR took notes. Legal closed the blinds. My phone vibrated until it went silent. In that moment, surrounded by witnesses who chose silence, I understood I had already been replaced there. By the time security escorted me out, the building already felt unfamiliar. The hallway lights were too bright. The carpet smelled like cleaner. No one met my eyes. My supervisor walked ahead of me, holding her tablet close to her chest, as if it contained something fragile. She did not look back. In the lobby, a guard asked for my badge. I handed it over without a word. The plastic felt warm from my hand. That badge had opened every door for years. Now it was evidence. Outside, the morning air felt thin. I sat in my car and waited for my breathing to slow. I did not cry. I watched people enter the building like nothing had changed. I checked my phone. No messages from management. No questions. No instructions. Just silence. I drove home because there was nowhere else to go. Later that afternoon, my supervisor called. Her voice was careful, professional. She said there had been an incident. She said there were procedures. She said it would be best if I stayed available. I asked her one question. Had anyone asked if the footage could be wrong? She paused, then said the systems were reliable. That was all. The call ended. I replayed the morning in my head. The warning at dawn. The call from the police. The conference room. Each piece lined up too neatly. Someone had chosen the easiest explanation. Someone had decided I was the least costly option. At work, I had always been dependable. Quiet. I filled gaps. I stayed late. I never complained. When budgets tightened, I absorbed extra work. When mistakes happened, I fixed them quietly. I thought that earned protection. It did not. That evening, an email arrived from legal. It said my access was suspended pending review. It thanked me for my cooperation. There was no greeting. No name. Just policy language. I noticed the time stamp. It had been drafted hours before my supervisor called me. The decision had already been made. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall. I thought about my father. About how he used to tell me that systems protect themselves first. People come second. I had argued with him then. I believed effort mattered. I believed fairness was built in. I was wrong. The next day, the police returned my call. They asked me to come in. I asked if I was a suspect. The officer said they just needed clarity. His tone was polite. Measured. I asked if my attorney could be present. There was a pause. He said that was fine. The word shifted something. Clarity had become caution. I did not go in that day. I waited. I watched the street from my window. I noticed a car parked too long near the corner. I noticed my phone battery draining faster than usual. I noticed how quickly my name disappeared from internal directories. Colleagues I messaged left my texts unread. Not declined. Unread. What hurt was not the accusation. It was the ease. The speed. The way authority moved around me, not through me. Someone higher had weighed the inconvenience of doubt against the comfort of certainty. Certainty won. Silence helped. By the end of the week, my supervisor emailed again. She said she hoped I understood the position they were in. She said she trusted the process. She said she wished me well. I read it twice. There was no apology. There was relief. I closed my laptop and sat very still. I understood then that this was not about facts. It was about alignment. And I was no longer aligned with the version of events they needed. The pattern did not announce itself all at once. It surfaced in small moments I had learned to dismiss. Meetings where my work was presented without my name. Emails where decisions were made before I was included. Performance reviews that praised reliability but never advancement. I had told myself this was normal. I told myself patience was maturity. Looking back, it was training. When others made mistakes, there were meetings and explanations. When I made mistakes, there was quiet correction. Quiet correction felt kind. It kept things moving. It also kept me small. I remembered a project 2 years earlier. I had flagged a security gap and proposed a fix. My manager thanked me and asked me to document it. The fix launched under someone else's name. I did not object. I told myself credit was shared. There were other times. A client complaint that arrived with my email attached. A compliance audit where my caution slowed a launch. Each time, I absorbed the friction. Each time, someone else kept momentum. The morning of the accusation fit the pattern perfectly. I was useful until I was inconvenient. When inconvenience arrived, usefulness expired. Friends from work stopped replying. Not with anger. With distance. Distance preserves comfort. I began listing moments in a notebook. Dates, names, outcomes. Not to prove anything. To see myself clearly. The list grew. It showed a consistent choice made by people above me. Choose speed over care. Choose silence over fairness. Choose me as the buffer. Once I saw it, I could not unsee it. The betrayal was not loud. It was procedural. And it had been happening for years. The warning from my neighbor reframed everything. Someone outside the system cared enough to interrupt it. Inside the system, people optimized. I stopped waiting for someone to correct the record. I stopped explaining myself to silence. I watched. At night, I replayed conversations and heard what was missing. No curiosity. No risk taken on my behalf. I also noticed something else. When the narrative hardened, it protected budgets and timelines. It protected reputations. It did not protect people. My father's voice returned to me in fragments. He used to say systems remember what they reward. I had been rewarded for endurance. Endurance made me easy to spend. By the end of that week, my shock cooled into resolve. Not anger. Clarity. I accepted that this was not a misunderstanding to fix. It was a position assigned to me. Understanding that changed how I moved. I became careful with my words. I kept records. I prepared. Not to fight loudly, but to stop being the quiet solution. The pattern had named me expendable. I decided to stop making that easy. The city kept moving as if nothing had happened. Buses ran. Emails stacked. Inside me, a door closed. I did not know then what the next boundary would be. I only knew I would recognize it. And when it came, I would not step aside. The waiting changed shape. It was no longer passive. It was watchful. I kept my days ordinary and my notes precise. I answered calls carefully. I listened more than I spoke. Being expendable had taught me where pressure collects. It collects on the quiet. I waited for the moment that would cross the line. I did not have to wait long. The next week delivered it with paperwork and a smile. That was how I knew. The system had chosen again, and it had chosen against me. This time, I did not absorb it. I stood still and let the consequence surface fully. The boundary was crossed in a letter delivered by certified mail. It arrived on a Tuesday, plain envelope, my name typed wrong by one letter. Inside was a notice placing me on unpaid leave and requiring a recorded interview within 48 hours. It stated that failure to appear could be interpreted as non-cooperation. It cited policies I had never seen. It attached screenshots I recognized and did not create. What made it cross the line was the attachment at the end. A reimbursement form submitted in my name, dated the morning of the attack, charging travel I did not take. Someone had moved from implication to fabrication. They were building a file that could stand without me. I called the number listed and asked a simple question. Who approved this? The answer was a pause, then a title, then a name I knew. Authority had signed it. Convenience had teeth. I stopped explaining. I hired counsel and said nothing else. Silence was not surrender. It was containment. That afternoon, I found a copy of my personnel file in a shared drive that should have been restricted. Notes had been added. Language had shifted from inquiry to conclusion. Words like likely and pattern appeared. The tone was settled. I remembered my father again, not as a warning but as instruction. When the frame is wrong, do not argue inside it. I withdrew my consent for interviews. I preserved devices. I documented access logs. I moved my savings. I updated beneficiaries. I did not announce any of it. Friends asked how I was. I said I was fine. That was true in a narrow way. I had stopped asking to be believed. I had stopped asking to belong. The fear thinned. In its place was a clean line. I would not be the material they molded. When the company announced cooperation with investigators, my name appeared in the release as an employee of interest. I read it once. I closed the browser. The line had been crossed publicly. I stepped back and let the record keep speaking. I did not beg. I did not rage. I prepared to leave the story they were writing. I chose distance, documents, and time, trusting that facts accumulate quietly, that systems eventually show their seams, and that my refusal to perform would become the clearest evidence left when pressure finally arrives there. I withdrew without announcements. My attorney filed notices. I stopped answering calls that circled the same questions. I returned equipment by courier and kept receipts. I rented a small office for a month and worked quietly on my own records. Days passed. Noise moved elsewhere. Consequences arrived without drama. Investigators requested original access logs from the vendor. The timestamps did not align. The badge clone appeared where my phone showed I was home. A parking camera from a nearby store captured a similar car with different damage. No press release corrected anything. Corrections rarely arrive with headlines. Finance followed. Expense reversals traced to a shared admin account. Approvals mapped upward. Emails surfaced that asked for speed and certainty. My name had been convenient. It was not necessary. Social distance shifted. Former colleagues asked careful questions. A manager resigned citing family reasons. Another stopped posting. Silence spread, this time around different desks. I did not comment. I did not explain. When asked, my counsel replied. When invited to speak, I declined. The story kept unfolding without me performing inside it. Weeks later, a brief notice appeared on the company's site about cooperation and updated findings. No names. No apology. The word amended did the work. I felt nothing dramatic. Just relief. I sold the house and moved closer to my sister. I slept better. I walked in the mornings. I took a contract that valued accuracy over speed. I learned how peace sounds when it is earned. The people who chose convenience learned its price. Not from me, but from process. Their own words did the revealing. Their shortcuts wrote the ending. I keep my notes archived. I keep my voice calm. I keep my life simple. The humiliation that began this story no longer defines me. It taught me where to stand. I move forward without witnesses now, and without needing them. That is dignity. That is enough. I keep boundaries firm and expectations modest. I choose work that leaves room for sleep. I answer fewer questions and ask better ones. I trust records more than rumors. I trust time more than outrage. When doubt returns, I reread the first note I made and breathe. Nothing else is required. The rest resolves itself. I carry forward quietly, attentive to consequences, free from spectacle, and steady in the knowledge that truth advances best when unassisted and remains human enough.